Hello and welcome to the first in a series of videos where we go behind the scenes of the greenkeepers here at Parkstone Golf Club. In this first video, we're going to look at irrigation and water use. We're going to look at our irrigation sources and how these are pumped down to our irrigation tanks. We'll then look at how these are applied through our automatic irrigation computer system. We'll then look at each individual surface and how we manage the moisture for optimum playing conditions. We'll then look at some of the restrictions we have. This is through water abstraction licenses and the actual capacity of the irrigation system itself. Finally, we'll look to the future and what Parkstone Golf Club are doing to secure a sustainable source of water so we can continue to produce top 100 golf standards on a daily basis when it gets hot. I hope you find this video enjoyable and informative, and it gives you a little insight into some of the challenges you face when it gets hot. Thank you. We're very fortunate at Parkstone Golf Club to have two water sources. The first is taken from the top reservoir. Interestingly, these reservoirs used to be the main drinking source for pool, and the old greenkeeping building was the pump house. We've had the water tested in these top reservoirs, and they're actually better for the turf than the mains water supply. Under regulation from the Environment Agency, we're allowed to abstract 18,000 metres cubes from the reservoirs during the period of March the 1st to the 31st of October. The water is sucked out of the reservoirs using two floating pumps, and these are suspended under the green lid in the middle of the picture. The water is then pumped down in underground pipes to the greenkeeping sheds. Our second source is off the mains drinking supply, but this obviously comes at a major cost to the club. Unfortunately, we don't get any favourable rates based on our large consumption. During the drought of 2018, we received a visit from Wessex Water, who were trying to locate a massive burst in their network as local residents of Camphor Cliffs had reported a major drop in pressure. They triangulated the points and they narrowed it down between ourselves and Compton Acres. When they finally arrived on site, I managed to tell them that it was us filling our irrigation tank which might be the problem. They were both relieved and concerned at the impact it was having for local residents. They threatened to turn our pressure down if we didn't stick to filling our tanks in off-peak hours. We've now come to agreement which suits both parties, and we don't fill the tank between 6 AM and 10 AM in the morning and 5 PM to 9:30 PM at night. Both feeds enter the 190 metre cube holding tank before being pressurised to 8 bar, which allows adequate pressure to run 8 irrigation heads at a time. The 3 pumps draw around 200 kilowatts during an average 8-hour irrigation cycle, which adds another considerable cost to our irrigation process. It's in the pump house where we also have the ability to switch between mains and our abstraction license. This is a critical piece of the puzzle when we're managing our water budget. We have several hundred irrigation heads distributed throughout the golf course. These cover greens, tees, approaches and runoffs and fairways. To manage the hydraulic flow to optimise water use and pressure, we use the excellent Toro Links computer system. This program predominantly manages the overnight watering of the golf course. The program reminds me very much of the old iTunes when you had to create playlists. Similar to that, our playlists are controlled down the left hand side of the screen and cover all our irrigated areas. The next column over controls the amount of water applied in millilitres over the course of the evening. The next column over controls start times or end times and the days of the week which we want the irrigation to come on. The system is super accurate and allows you the ability to hone in on individual areas, whether that's whole green complexes or individual heads. For an example, if we look at the second green, you can see that for a 2.3mm irrigation cycle, you're putting on an average of just over 4 minutes per head. Once you've decided on the final millilitres required to go on each surface, the computer system will give you a projected flow to show you how the irrigation will be applied over your selected time period. This information is then converted into electrical signals, which passes through the main control box, turning heads on and off in their selected time frame. So we've looked at the water sources and the irrigation system itself, but how do we come up with how much water we apply in any given evening? The key to this is working out evapotranspiration rates. This is simply how much water is lost from the plant over any given day. We're lucky at Partstone again that we have our own weather station, and this gives us site-specific information on our daily evapotranspiration rates. Before we look at the individual surfaces in more detail, I thought it would be a good idea to look at our total evaporation rates for the year. As you can see, we've had a particularly dry year this year, with high evaporation and low rainfall. What this means is that the turf goes into a water deficit. If we hadn't replaced any water through the irrigation system, the turf would be in a 340 ml deficit. This equates to 13.5 inches and would have significant impact on turf quality. This is very evident on areas of the golf course which aren't irrigated. For example, the left hand side of 17 near the bell. So let's start to look at the individual areas. Firstly, looking at greens. For our site, I found that replacing 50% of the ET rates during the night works best for our soil conditions. I like to look at the pop-up sprinklers as a broad brush stroke. However, you can't rely on these solely to produce consistent playing surfaces. By the nature of the irrigation design, as you can see from the diagram, the centres of the green receive more water than the perimeters. And this is where the skill of the greenkeeper comes in, to level out the inconsistencies in moisture between the centres and the surrounds. Just before we look at how we achieve this, it's very important to understand that we also have two different strains of grasses on our greens, each of which requires different levels of moisture to keep it happy. The pale green areas in the photograph, now highlighted in the blue shade, are Poania plants. Poania is most happy at around 27 to 30% moisture. However, bentgrass, the darker green areas in the photograph, are happy at much lower moisture levels in around the mid-teens to early 20s. If we were to favour Poania, this would mean that the greens would become soft and very receptive, creating lots of pitch marks. However, if we go the other way and solely give an environment where the bentgrass would be happy, the POA would stress and give us a number of potential summer disease issues and a bobbly putting surface. So to find the happy middle ground, we tend to aim for a moisture content in our greens between 23 and 26% in the morning for setup. So this is achieved by sending 3 greenkeepers out each morning, each armed with a moisture probe. So each greenkeeper will walk onto the green and take an average of about 9 points around the centres and the perimeters. He'll then use this data and the skill and experience to fill in the low areas of moisture with the hand hose. This is such a critical piece of our current daily setup, that I allocate 3 people to this job every morning, even before we set out the other tasks. If we do arrive at a green that is particularly low in moisture and we feel it needs extra overhead irrigation, this is where we can utilise the excellent Toro Irrigation app. Utilising the phone, we can scroll into the map, highlight heads, and then program a run time. This is then sent to the irrigation computer, which pops the head. In order to ensure we're not either over or under watering, I also use 2 other pieces of excellent technology. Before I go to bed at night, I'll log in and check our weather station, which gives us an up-to-date evaporation rates. We can then use another application on the phone, which allows you to log in remotely and control the irrigation computer. For this example, we lost 4.8 millilitres of evaporation during the day. So on the computer, I'm going to change the parameters to put on 2.4 mil during the course of the evening. We then synchronise the system to update any changes, and then finally check the projected flow just to make sure that there's no issues with the timing. We're either late evening golfers or early morning greenkeepers will be affected by the irrigation. Looking at our approaches and runoffs now, it's imperative that we apply just enough water to keep the grass healthy enough that if you miss the green, you're going to have 100% grass coverage and not have any tricky bare lies. Meanwhile, ensuring that the surfaces are firm enough where a ball is going to bounce and release onto the green itself. We take great pride on our approaches and runoffs at Parkstone, and now we feel that these are particularly important to the defence of the golf course. There are many steep banks and slopes on our runoffs. Some of these require extra overhead irrigation, but the same as the greens, many of these areas required hand hosing, and we catch these on the way round whilst we're watering greens. Here we have Greg on the 6th approach, and you can quite clearly see the browned off areas on the mounds. Hand watering is required on every single approach and runoff in the morning, with the team skillfully applying just enough water to see the grass through the day. During maintenance weeks, we also overseed these areas with drought-resistant fescues to help us through periods of hot weather. As you can see, we take as much care and attention in approaches runoffs as we do on the greens. The tees at Parkstone are just under a hectare in size. Given that we experience over 35,000 rounds per year, we need to ensure that they are healthy enough to withstand this concentrated wear. Whilst we're in drought conditions, we try and match daily ET rates with the nightly irrigation. Currently, we're applying on average 3 to 4 mil of water each night. This means that the divot mixture on tees can germinate quickly. We use a dwarf rye mixture on the tees, and this is incredible, filling divots in less than 7 days. Like greens, approaches and runoffs, we can't so rely on the overhead sprinklers to ensure adequate moisture to every part of the tee. Some tees are more exposed to the elements, while others have more sandy soil structure. Any dry areas are also hand watered during morning setup, thus ensuring we can present our tees to championship standards on a daily basis. Our fairways are 13 hectares in size and are the biggest consumer of our water allowance. They also pose the biggest challenge when trying to produce 100% grass coverage during hot spells of weather. With daily ET rates of 4 mil, we have a series of challenges to overcome. Firstly, the irrigation system wasn't designed to replace this volume of water over the course of one irrigation cycle. The pump system can apply 2 ml of water in the time parameters we require, this being 9:30 p.m. to 6 a.m. If we did try and match ET rates, the projected flow shows that the programme would have to start at 7 p.m. and finish at 7:30 in the morning. We also don't have the wattage storage capacity. If we were to try and apply 4 ml of water in one night, the outfall would far exceed the inflow, causing the pumps to cut out. This would mean we'd need to double the size of the current tank to meet demand, at a cost of over £100,000 to install. Finally, we don't have enough water to apply these volumes to the fairways. This would require 16,500 cube each month. To put this into perspective, in the last 8 years, the maximum water used over the year was 31,000 metres cubed. The other challenge we face is the different soil structures spread over the site. An excellent example of this is on our 11th fairway. As you can see from the images, the area on the right is green, whilst the area on the left is brown, with both areas receiving the same amount of water from a sprinkler each night. Again, as you move further up the fairway, the same issue presents itself. If we take a bird's eye view of the same area, it's really obvious where the different soil structures start and stop. It also clearly shows the areas which give us major drainage issues through the winter and stay green and healthy through a hot spell. We're currently doing everything we can to maintain grass coverage on the fairways, with the system running at full capacity during the evening, applying 370 metres cube of water. Being a heathland course, we also want to keep the character of the fast-running fairways. The mixture of browns is an integral part of summer heathland golf. Maintaining accurate figures of water use is a statutory requirement by the Environment Agency. The figures need to be submitted yearly to prove we are staying within our licence parameters. We log the figure from a meter which measures the flow from the reservoir into the irrigation tank. Managing the water budget is all about ensuring we have enough water available from our abstraction licence allocation should a hosepipe ban be brought into face. This would cut off our ability to switch to the main supply. The way in which I deal with this is to keep around 1,700 metres cubed per month in stock for the remaining months of the season. This can then be drawn on at any time of the day or night. In a worst case scenario, this would be enough to keep the grass alive on greens, tees and approaches and runoffs. However, fairway irrigation would have to be turned off. As we get into September and October, the ET rates drop significantly, meaning we can draw on our final remaining abstraction licence water, ensuring we use our full allocation if required. I also keep James and the management committee up to date on our mains water costs, which allows them to forecast for future spend for the rest of the season. So far this year we've consumed a total of 22,700 metres cubed of water, 13,000 metre cube from our abstraction licence and 9,700 metres cubed from our main supply. With no significant rainfall in the forecast, this could be a record year for water use. So what does the future hold for Partstone Golf Club and its water usage? Well, we do know two things. One, currently our 18,000 metre cube abstraction licence is not adequate enough to apply the correct amount of moisture to all our surfaces. And secondly, that we can no longer rely on the main water source to make up this shortfall. There are also signs that in the future, mains water will not be allowed to irrigate golf courses. After a few false starts, the club have employed the services of Andrew Roberts, an ex-Environment Agency employee. Andrew has visited the site and feels that we have a very strong case to supplement the current 18,000 metre cube abstraction licence in the future using more water from the reservoir behind me. In order to best present our case to the Environment Agency, Andrew will take detailed measurements of water entering and exiting the reservoirs. Reservoirs are filled from a natural spring, which gives a consistent flow even through periods of hot and dry weather. It enters the reservoir just to the right-hand side of the first fairway, before travelling into the lower reservoir and out into the Luscombe stream. It's crucial we demonstrate to Natural England that any additional water abstracted will not impact the sensitive mire areas around the 8th, 11th and 12th holes. This will be done through an environmental impact study. We estimate that by the end of the 2026 season, we'll have an answer from the Environment Agency on whether an extension to our current abstraction licence will be granted. This is not the only option available to us if the answer is no. However, it is the simplest and most affordable. One thing that may go in our favour is the fact that we are the last user of the water before it exits the course and enters Poole Harbour. Hopefully you've enjoyed watching this video, which gives you a little insight into some of the processes we use at Partstone Golf Club to maintain premium turf conditions through dry weather.